So here's one of the things I want to say about how the fact that the planet was like an original series set when they first went down.
Mm-hmm.
And it was noticeable because we're getting less and less and less of those as the time of TNG goes on.
They've been doing more location shoots, or they've been building new sets. And,
right.
Yeah.
But at first I was like, this is so stupid. The Borg are the technologically advanced. Like, why are you showing us this old, like, I was like, why? And then I thought, no, that's on purpose. Because we are in the original series set looking at this kind of like what we're used to in Star Trek. And the Borg are these, they're technologically advanced in a way that even in 1990 would have been like scary, right? And there's a point where they're like blowing up like little WAPs in the Borg ship, and I was like, that's not even really like something we knew about at that time, but that's basically what they were, And I was watching all this, and I was like, they had that original series set in the first scene so that we could like be kind of like jarred by the inside of the Borg ship, which we had seen before, but this time it was much clearer. There was more stuff. It wasn't all dark and smoky, like we could actually see the technology more.
Remember, at this point, TOS ended after 3 seasons.
Right.
This is the 3rd season finale.
So this
and
would
we're
be
getting more. So this is the moment when people realized that TNG had surpassed TOS.
You've seen the best.
You've seen the worst.
Now here's the rest of both worlds.
I'm GayFesh, and I'll show you my 2 pair if you show me your whole card.
And I'm Ari. Chill it out. Take it slow.
And today we'll be discussing the Star Trek The Next Generation episodes Transfiguration and The Best of Both Worlds Part 1. We've finally gotten to our namesake.
Yeah.
And hi, Ari. It's so nice to see you.
I know. This is so weird. I keep looking down because, like, when I'm recording, I'm usually looking at my notes and I'm like I don't have to think about people, but you're across from me today.
Yeah, so we're actually recording this one together. I don't know if it'll sound any different, but just trying this out today. It should be fun. So we're getting to the end of... Actually, we are at the end of Season 3, so we're going to skip our usual small talk, and once we get to the end, we'll just talk about the season as a whole. If you are feeling so generous, head on over to patreon.com/restofbothworlds. For any amount, you will gain access to these episodes up to 5 days early and a spot on our Discord where you can submit ideas for small talks at the beginning of each episode. And for the $10 tier, we will read your name out at the end of each episode. Nobody's taken that one yet. You could be the first.
All right. So first, before we talk about Best of Both Worlds, we're going to talk about Transfigurations, which is the 25th episode of the 3rd season. It first aired on the 4th of June, 1990. It was written by Renee Echevarria and directed by Tom Benko.
This is such a boring episode.
I was so bored. Remember, I texted you in the middle of watching it, like, can't I make this go faster? I thought Prime used to have a thing where I could 2 times it.
Yeah. You said that, and I said, yeah, that would make it more bearable. And also, I think it might be, like, an episode that takes place over the longest period of time for any TNG episode, because, like, the guy was there for a month. Yeah, it was like we went through his whole physical therapy.
Yeah.
The episode is they find a crashed pod, and there's a dude who's been in the escape pod, and he's like badly injured, and they have to nurse him back to health. He has full amnesia, but he's also got like E.T. magic hands.
E.T. magic hands. He also had the cool zombie makeup where they show the teeth. Like, because his cheek face was like,
This was really gory makeup when we find him in the accident. I was like, that's like, you would think if they were going to make it that gory, they would have given him like alien green blood or something like that, so it wouldn't look as graphic, but it was pretty graphic.
Yeah.
But since he has amnesia, they just call him John Doe.
Which I thought was funny. In all the time that's passed, we haven't come up with a new fake name for people.
Well, like hospitals will usually use Doe as a placeholder last name and then give people just different first names.
Oh, do they?
Like, yeah. No, it seems like it's a good process, although it does feel a little, I don't know, teaching you your proper Christian name rather than, because it's like he's an alien. John probably is not a name in his species.
Yeah.
But the episode kind of, I don't really know what the point of it is.
Yeah. So I think one of the few points was that Beverly got like a romance plot, even though it was like this weird ethical, should you be in this romance plot?
Wesley's like, oh, I think there might be something more. And she's like, look, no, doctor-patient relationship always goes into murky areas where, you kind of have like some blurred boundaries in the relationship.
But she definitely had a twinkle in her eye.
She did. But you know what she didn't have? A handrail for physical therapy. when he's like, he's been like bedridden for like a month, and they're like, okay, we're gonna put some bands around your arms and legs, which will help you walk. And so he just like stands up and is just like walking around a little bit with like no assistance, and then she has to catch him immediately. And I'm like, where's the handrail?
I liked how he was doing pretty good, and then Picard walks in the room, and Picard had to catch him.
That's right.
I thought his whole plot was boring. I was just kind of like, but I do want to talk about at the very beginning. Well, there's two things I want to talk about at the very beginning.
Yeah.
First is Picard said the quiet thing. So I work in a school, and you're not allowed to say it's quiet because like people will freak out at you, because like as soon as you say it's quiet, everybody's like, what did you just say, Ari? Like, it's really weird.
You jinxed it.
I did, but I actually did jinx it the other day. It was really quiet, and I looked at somebody. I was like, hey, how come they aren't, like, freaking out at lunch like they normally do? 30 seconds later, that guy looks at me and goes, Ari! And it was because they were, like, literally, like, running around. But he said the quiet thing, and I was like, So my favorite part of this episode had nothing to do with the glowy man.
No.
So I've now decided, headcanon, Worf has a dating podcast. I've decided. And so if Worf had a dating podcast, what do you think it would be called?
Okay, you asked me this like an hour ago to
gave
start
you a little bit of
thinking about
time.
it, and I totally forgot to think of anything. But based on his comments in this one, I would think it would be something to do with scent, like.
I know. I was trying to come up with the scent one too.
Love
scent
sense.
of love.
Love sense or something like that. Like love sense, like it's a like SENSE,
Love sense.
but it's spelled
That's really
sense.
good. Yeah. Mine was gonna be the take my Worf, please. Because I love that one so much. But his dating advice, man, I was like, oh no, it's gonna be a Geordi like dating plot. I was like, oh no, I'm so scared. Then he's like, what was the other line? It's later. He's like,
because Data and Geordi are like geeking out over that little glass ball thing, and Worf is just annoyed because they're talking shop at 10 forward, and he says, less talk, more synthahol.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'd want to ask Worf all sorts of dating advice, I think.
I love his dating advice because I'm just like, I'm sure this works great on the Klingon females, but like this, dude, you were raised by humans. I'm betting you didn't have a girlfriend growing up.
Yeah, his advice was weird because Geordi says, well, what should I say or whatever? And he's like, it's not about the words, it's about how you smell. And I'm like, I guess. But I loved it. I loved it. I have much to teach you about women. I wrote that one down.
Yeah, every time Worf tries to give love advice, I'm like, talk to anybody else. But then just thinking about some of the stories that he has in terms of relationships later on in like Deep Space Nine and stuff, I'm like, he's getting some pretty hot women, so maybe he knows something.
Maybe he does know something. Maybe there's something about the Klingons that's attractive to people. I want to talk about the thing that they did where they put a patch on Geordi's head, and then they put a patch on the dying guy, and I think that was to stabilize him, but it was like
his
magic.
His like brain wasn't communicating with like his body systems to regulate everything, so she's like, I need to use Geordi's brain waves to regulate it so that stabilize the patient.
I totally thought it was going to be a Freaky Friday because of that.
Well, they did. As soon as they put it on, there was like a big yellow glowing thing that went right into Geordi's brain.
Yeah.
So that would be a natural thought, but instead it just makes him stop being an incel.
Yeah. He gets more confidence, which I don't think he needed more confidence. He just got more easygoing. Like, I don't know.
Well, it's because at the beginning of the episode, Geordi is like trying to work up the nerve to talk to this cute girl. And like, it's clear that she's kind of into him because like when she goes up to like get another drink, she's like, hey, Geordi, and like tries to chat him up.
She was cute too.
And he just clams up and he doesn't know what to say. And that is a confidence thing. He's just like, I think he just got too in his head about it.
So did the guy heal him then? Like, was it from trauma? Like, maybe Geordi's had some trauma in his past, so that's what could... So then, because the guy heals everybody, so maybe when that light shot into him, it healed that trauma part of Geordi's brain that makes him not confident.
Yeah, it could have been that. I mean, because, as soon as he's, healed up, he, like, just goes and chats up. What was her name? I think.
I forget too.
It was like Christy Henshaw.
Yeah.
And like she's just like, oh hey Jordy, I was just going to the Arboretum. He's like, oh well, I'll take you there, and he like puts out his arm and takes her. And
I know.
It's just really smooth. And then like later, Riker walks into the turbo lift and they're making out, and it's like, hey Jordy, good for you, man.
I know. I watched her put that thing on him, and I was like, oh no, it's gonna be Freaky Friday, right? And I was like, okay, well we've had a couple of these, right? And especially when he had amnesia, I was like, okay, so he's pretending to have amnesia or something. I don't know. That was what I thought this was doing. And then I was just bored to death for a long time.
And, I mean, you weren't completely bored to death. We were given some unintentional eye candy. The guy's wearing just a white one-piece suit, and he's not wearing a dancing belt. Folks, if you're going to wear something skin tight that's not black, wear a dancing belt. Otherwise, you will see the entire shape of the whole package.
I was disturbed. Yes, I was like, don't want to watch this. I was watching Crusher do the thing with the head and then bringing this guy back to life, and I had this moment where I was like, what in the Frankenstein is going on here? And then I was like, no, Crusher is the Dr. Crusher's monster. But we had a ton of medical technobabble. Like, we don't always get medical.
With medical technobabble, like, because we have, like, I mean, obviously, like, humanity doesn't really physiologically change in 400 years, so they're going to use a lot of the same terms. Like, a lot of stuff that you hear in there might just be the geekier parts of, like, an episode of House.
Right. It kind of reminded me of House. Yeah.
As it turns out, this guy was actually, like, running away from, like, a fascist government because apparently his species is, like, on the cusp of evolving into,
turning into a space baby.
Turning into a space baby, yeah. Or trading in his white one piece for a yellow morph suit.
I couldn't remember what they were called, but it had like you could see the seam and everything on the top.
They put a glow effect over it, but you're like, yeah, I can just. It's obvious you're just wearing a morph suit. I also can buy that
for $10 at Spirit Halloween, guys.
But like when the fascist ship comes, it's like, oh, you must send him to us so that we can execute him. And like Picard is instead of saying no, he's sought asylum on our place, we're not giving him back to him. He's like, well, we should consider this. Should we give him back to them? And everyone's like, no. I think the big concern there was that the ship had like evenly matched the Enterprise in terms of armaments. So if they don't hand him over, it could turn into thing where everyone dies.
Yeah.
And, Picard
this is going to come up in the next episode, too, because, like,
Yeah, we'll get there when we get there. But they didn't really, it was, like, just the vaguest notions of, like, I guess it was kind of like the X-Men, right? Because he was like mutating into a higher being, and they were persecuting him for
that's why I was referencing 2001, because they're off to, that's the whole point of 2001 is this next evolution of humans.
Yeah.
But so originally I was like, oh, I wonder if he's gonna go off to be a space baby. That's what I call the end of 2001.
Pretty much did.
But he pretty much did. As it happened, I was like clapping and like, yay, space baby. When Wesley walks in for the very first time with his ensign uniform on, I had forgotten that he had been promoted to ensign, and I went, and when he walked in the room. Oh, yeah. I just love this. I loved Wesley in this episode. I loved the banter between Bev and Wesley. Mm-hmm. Like, that was such, we don't get that enough. In the first season, we used to get that, and then everybody didn't like Wesley or whatever, so they gave him less and less, it felt like. But we haven't seen Wesley and Mom have, like, Wesley and Mom.
Well, yeah, because with first season, oftentimes it was, because Wesley wasn't on the bridge that much, it was usually just Wesley hanging out in sickbay with his mom.
Right.
And then in season 2, when she left the show, obviously they had to have Wesley do other things, and he's, flying the ship now. So,
right.
So at least
and attending huge board meetings. Oh wait, I think that's the next episode. But I was surprised to see him in there.
But it's nice to see their relationship. I like it every time that they interact, and I like that Wesley isn't like solely defined as being her son at this point in the show. He's an officer on the ship.
I think that's really a benefit of having had her leave in season 2.
Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately If you had asked me, would I rather Gates stay on for the entire 7 seasons, I don't know the answer to that because everything would be different.
Remember how much I hated Pulaski? Mm-hmm. I've actually been thinking about this a lot in season 3. I think that break gave me a chance to actually appreciate Beverly even more as like a character, as an actor, that kind of stuff. I look back on the Pulaski time and I'm like, okay, it wasn't that bad. It was just they didn't have to take away Beverly to give me Pulaski. I would have actually enjoyed having Pulaski join the ship and have Beverly still there. Like, that would have been interesting. Mm-hmm. But the only difference is they took away one of my favorite characters. So, yeah.
After just killing off another of your favorite characters.
I know. So let's talk about O'Brien's totally tubular Taco Bell uniform.
Oh my God, that just reminds me. Yeah, because he walks in, he's like has a kayaking accident or something, and he sprained his shoulder. That's kind of a thing that happens a lot on Deep Space Nine. I seem to remember he's always like
actually. I had paused Prime, and they said trivia. This is the first time, but somebody says, "Oh, kayaking again," and it becomes a recurring joke on DS9. Is what the notes said.
But Wesley's there, and like Wesley just like walks right up to him, like, "Hey pal, how you doing?" And slaps him on the shoulder.
I've got to tell you, I had that shoulder surgery like in 2009 or whatever. People touch your arms so much.
And you don't realize it until
the doctor told me, he's like, you need to wear the sling even if it's not hurting because that tells people, don't touch my arm. And I was like, oh, good point.
Yeah.
But yeah, that outfit was something I was like, what in the 80s just walked into the sick bay? But so he's all, and I loved he was in the background. They're having like a discussion, and he's like in the background like, because he's in so much pain.
Yeah, and he's like, Doc, I'm dying out here. But then the guy comes and E.T. touches it, and he's fine.
E.T. touches him. That's exactly what it was with even the glowing yellow light. I didn't even think about that.
It's a whole hand instead of the one like light bulb finger, but it's still the same thing. He has magic hands.
Yeah, magic hands. I was trying to think of what it reminded me of because I knew it reminded me of something, and I was like, is it Star Wars when like in the last movie Rey can heal people? I was like, that's not it. Yeah. I was like, what's it remind me of? I love the whole time that he has his amnesia. He's like, I have to escape. I have to get off this ship. And we're like, so we think he's like running away from something, but he's actually trying to protect the ship, but he's just following like his gut instincts because he doesn't know why because of the amnesia. That was one of the only few interesting parts of his arc to me because I don't have amnesia, but my gut instinct says here that we're going to blow up or whatever, I thought that was interesting. And then he does, and then he kills Worf.
Well, yeah, he kills, but he heals Worf too, so it's fine.
Because Worf is Jesus now.
Yeah.
Worf is Jesus.
I mean, I don't think... No, he can't be Jesus because I think one of the prophecies was that Jesus' bones were never broken and Worf broke his neck.
Oh, I've never heard the thing about the bones.
Yeah, I think that's specifically pointed out because usually like when they would, later on in the crucifixion, they'd like break your legs so that you can't like push yourself up to breathe. But he died before they
Every
could do that.
Every time I learn new things about crucifixions, I'm like, humans are terrible.
Oh, yeah. Crucifixion's awful. It's a horrible way to die.
Yeah.
I feel like Worf's death would have been a lot more instantaneous, falling, 3 stories and breaking his neck?
Yeah.
But then again, he's a Klingon, so he probably was conscious the whole time, just feeling all of that pain because they, Klingon physiology is a little more robust than ours. But even then, 200 pounds on your neck, that won't be good.
No. So this all happens. He's running away. He's trying to get to his escape pod. They're like, no, you can't get escape. And then his people come. Yeah. And they're like, give us that guy. And this has happened like 10 times now. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm not just going to give you the guy. And so they're like, give us the guy. And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, of course they're not going to give you the guy because Beverly's crushing on him, and so I'm like, okay, what's going to happen here? Like, I was like, what's going to happen here? Like, what's going to be different? Because I had guessed that he was going to be a space baby, but my guesses aren't always true.
Yeah. And especially like a 2001 guess.
Right. Because my brain always goes there. Yeah. And so I was just like, nah, he's not going to. And then, and then it happened. Like, he turned into this yellow glowing morph suit thing. My notes say, he's off to be a space baby again, all in caps. And he did. He Tinkerbell Peter Pan his way off the ship and just left. The coolest thing though was when he had his transformation, he put his hand out and he teleported the guy onto the bridge.
Yeah. That was a cool effect. Although I noticed, like, as the guy gets pulled off of his bridge onto their bridge, The background people don't react at all. There's like a guy who's just sitting there working on his thing.
Oh,
and
really?
He doesn't even like look up or anything.
Whereas we would all go, if somebody disappeared, you know,
exactly.
what? Yeah. I got a little bit of Dr. Manhattan vibes in the morph suit. Yeah. So just.
I mean, we saw pretty much the penis anyway.
I know. I think maybe that's why my brain was there. For like lasting what this episode could bring, nothing other than we got to see Bev have a little bit of time.
And this isn't even like the only time that Star Trek has done the storyline of a species is evolving into a higher being and ascending to like an energy thing.
Right.
But like, what was the point of it? Like, if the point was he's a persecuted minority, like an X-Men kind of a thing, then why spend the whole episode with him not even remembering it? It was like they tacked on the fascist oppression for like the last 10 minutes of the episode. And they didn't really say anything about it because like Picard was even just like, well, let's talk this out. And I'm like, you can't talk to fascists.
Right, I know. And I kept waiting to find out if he'd actually done something terrible. But the last time we saw this, I believe, was earlier in this season, right? Because we had that penal colony where the only bad thing they had done was ask not to be murdered or whatever, and they had the teleporter that was killing them. Mm-hmm. Basically kind of the same plot. Like, it was kind of like, there's these people, no, you got to give them to us or whatever. And I was like, okay, I think maybe that's one of the reasons I was done with it. You know, I was just like, okay. So the stuff between Bev and the guy was really cute. John Doe was really cute. Until at the very, very, very end, after he's doing his whole, I'm Jesus, I'm off to be a space baby, everybody can join me thing, he comes up to Bev and he has like an extra like moment with her, and they choose to cut to Jean-Luc for about 2 seconds, and he's like got this look on his face like, what happened? You know? And I was like, ooh, Jean-Luc is mad that he's touching his lady. But I mean, other than that, I didn't really like this one. It's amazing we just pulled 20 minutes out of it.
I
know, that's true. I was like, because as I was watching it, I was like, it's all going to be, you know, best of both worlds, you know?
Yeah.
Which we're going to talk about now. All right, here we are. We're here. I'm excited. We're going to talk about the best of both worlds. It first aired on the 18th of June, 1990. It was written by Michael Piller and directed by Cliff Bole.
Yes, we're here.
We're here.
I actually, because I just got here when you were about halfway done with the episode, so I got to watch your reaction in real time. And like right at the end, when he goes, Mr. Worf, fire, to be continued, you like hit the desk. You're like, oh, come on.
I exclaimed the Leia, what?
And this is why I wanted to split them up, because originally when I was scheduling everything out, I had both parts as one, but then I realized, no, we had to wait 3 months. You can wait a week.
Yeah.
And I want to capture that. Also because I kind of feel like the two parts of the episode are kind of they're very different stories. Mm-hmm. Because like they didn't write them all as like one complete whole. They wrote the cliffhanger, and then they were like, okay, we're on break for 3 months, then we'll figure it out when we get back.
How are we gonna end this? Yeah.
So Best of Both Worlds is usually remembered for, you know, it's the time that Picard became a Borg.
Right.
But this first part is not a Picard story. This is a Riker story.
It's all about Riker.
And they introduce a new character, Shelby. She's basically the Borg expert at Starfleet, and she's brought on because they found a colony scooped up like the Borg did in like.
I knew it was the Borg too. As soon as they showed the big hole, I was like, oh yeah. Well, I mean, I knew it was a Borg episode. Yeah.
As we find out, not only is she a Borg expert, but she's gunning for Riker's job.
Right.
Because Riker has been offered captaincy of the USS Melbourne, and he's turned it down, but, like, not everyone knows that, and Shelby had heard, oh, well, he's leaving, well, I want his job.
Yeah.
And so, like, basically, immediately, when she tells him that she wants that job, and he's like, oh, well, I wasn't leaving, that just immediately starts up some animosity between the two of them, some tension, which I love. I love how much they play off each other, because this episode, I think, really threads the needle where Shelby could be unlikable, but isn't.
Not.
I like her a lot. I can see some people who might not like her, but she's not a bad person. She's not annoying. She's just very assertive. She knows what she wants. She's she'll step on some toes to get it. But that's kind of like Riker even talks to Deanna is like, what am I still doing here on this ship? Like
he says to Deanna.
Deanna, yeah, and he's
because that's why he's still on the ship. This ship.
But he points out, he's like, the drive and the ambition. He's like, I liked those things about me, and here she is showing them off, and I'm getting annoyed at it. And like, there's times where she's breaking the chain of command, like she beams down to the planet without notifying him of the change.
The original series set. Because I have a point about that. I just want to like it was a very original series set.
Because it was like right at the edge of like the cutout. So I don't think they filmed it outside. They did actually do an outside shot in the previous episode. I think they filmed it in like the Sierra Nevada mountains. But this one was just on a set when they had a matte painting for the whole big scoop thing.
Yeah.
That and like once we find out that it is the Borg, she like has a plan that she pitches to Riker, and he says, it's Sasha separation. He's like, I think that's too risky. She's like, well, the captain should decide. And he's like, yeah, I'll bring it to the captain. Well, she goes and brings it to the captain before him, and he's just like, excuse me.
Yeah, because he came into the room, right? Like he was in the ready room, or he went to go see Picard in the ready room, and she was in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. I liked her. I thought it was a good, like, it was good for Riker. It was good for his character development. Yeah. I mean, this whole episode was a Riker episode.
The whole episode is a Riker episode, and I feel like the whole episode is a build to put Riker in the position where he has to make the hard call to kill Picard.
And this time he actually makes that call. He doesn't find a magic like button that fixes it.
No, he says, like, Mr. Worf, fire. Because, and even Shelby, Shelby's the most, ambitious one who will make hard calls. Even she's just like, no, we'll buy more time. We'll find another way. We'll go back. We can get Picard. And he's like, we don't have time. This is our only shot. We got to take it. The episode confronts Riker's complacency, gives him a kick in the ass, and sets him up to be like, hey, look at me. You're the captain now.
I'm the captain now. And that's how it ends, Yeah. Oh, actually, it doesn't end that way. First, Deanna has to say, hey, little guy, you can't go down there. Like, you're in charge now.
I think it hadn't set into Riker that he's the captain until Deanna points out, it's inappropriate for you to lead the away mission because Picard's not here, so you are the captain of the ship. Your place is on the bridge.
Right.
And I'm glad that she was there to put him in his place.
It had to be her because he wouldn't have listened to anybody else.
And as soon as she said it, though, he's like, nope, you are absolutely right. Shelby, go on over.
Yeah.
And
plus, she's the Borg expert.
She's the Borg expert, and and Beverly gets to go over, and she's so excited to be on the away team. She's
smiling the whole time. I'm like, you are on a dangerous mission, ma'am.
You're literally on a ship that I don't think has walls preventing atmosphere from escaping. I think they just have force fields up because, like, the exterior shots of the Borg cube, you can see pretty far into the ship, like. Which I love the design of this cube because we were talking before the podcast about how like the design of the cube in the first one kind of looked like they had just taken like the frames of like model ships.
Yeah.
When you just the sheets of all the pieces, they would just like glue those frames together to make it. But this one has depth to it. They have like little green LEDs inside the model. It looks really good. But every time I see a Borg cube, because of that, I'm just thinking, they have to have force fields up everywhere, and that's the only way that they have an atmosphere in there, because the ship is just like a big open thing.
Yeah. So last time we saw the Borg, which is the only time we saw the Borg, right? This is the second time we've seen the Borg. So when the first time we saw the Borg, did they assimilate, or is this something that's happened
this is something
since
new.
then?
This is new.
So they've continued to like grow or whatever.
Yeah, and I think...
Or they hadn't decided on the design.
They hadn't finalized the design. It's basically retconned after this point that's always been the Borg's goal is assimilation.
What about the adapting thing? I can't remember if they could doomsday.
Yeah, they could do that in the first episode too.
Okay.
That was always a thing. But I think the original plan with the Borg and the first time we saw them is that they were just a single species, but they just all would cybernetically enhance themselves from birth.
And they weren't hive mind, right?
They were all hive mind. They were always a hive mind. They were always a cybernetic species, but having them incorporate other species, I think that was introduced in this episode, but it kind of gets retconned to be what they always were.
Okay. That makes sense. And that's the whole reason they want Picard, because they're like, why do they want Picard? Why do they want Picard? And then I thought it was interesting that not once did Picard say, maybe I should just go over there. I was like, I guess, I mean, It's because he knows it's not going to solve the problem, right? Like if he goes over there and they murder him, or whatever.
And also the fact that as soon as they get Picard, they immediately set course for Earth. But before they get Picard, because like the Enterprise is hiding in a nebula, and they're waiting right outside the nebula. Like, well, we got all day. We can as soon as you show up, we're gonna get you. No, obviously, because it was Picard that they wanted, they're like, okay, well, we can keep them away from other people in the meantime.
Right. I liked that. I didn't like him, like, oh, I want to go have a drink with him or whatever, but I liked that other starship captain guy that was like because it made it more military war.
Admiral Hayes,
yeah. I like having him there.
He's one of the few times we see an admiral in Star Trek where it's not like he's not like a complete dickbag.
I know. I think that's why I liked him. Yeah.
He's obviously he's like kind of a character actor. I'm sure he plays military guys all the time. He's just kind of got that gruff demeanor, but like a no-nonsense kind of a guy. But you could. I mean, he's like amicable with Picard. They're like on a first name basis while they're talking, and I like him. I think he comes back in the next episode. Yeah, he does.
I mean, because he's the one that would be above Riker, right?
Yeah.
So
I love this episode so much, and you were talking about it too as we were watching the music in this episode.
Oh my god! Like I have not really I hear the music, but this one made me stop and listen. Like it made me go, oh my god, the music's so good. And like when he turns around for the first time and you see like in the light and it like you hear the very faint in the background Star Trek like melody, like
that. And the Borg theme in this episode, they use the synth choral the thing that you would get like on a Casio keyboard from the 80s, but it's just this da 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 da. And I love that theme. It's so good. It's so creepy and eerie, and it's just playing softly when Locutus makes his big appearance and announces that you're all dead.
Yeah, I know. And then, like you said, I slammed my hand down because I was pausing the thing, and then you were like, put it back on because you need to hear the rest of the music. And I was like, oh yes, the rest of the music. It was so good. And didn't you say that Seth MacFarlane
licensed it for use in an episode of Family Guy that I think like it was like either like the commercial break, like a cliffhanger for the commercial break, or for like the end of the episode if it was a two-parter or something like that. Because Seth MacFarlane's a huge Star Trek fan. I mean, he made the Orville, which I've been hearing is actually I haven't watched it, but I've heard that it's actually like really kind of like a good Star Trek show.
My husband likes it a lot. He says it's very progressive, which is weird for Seth MacFarlane.
It just went on Disney Plus, so I've been watching. Did it? Yeah, okay. I've gotten up to like the 5th episode or something like that where Charlize Theron shows up.
We should watch it and do like a one-off episode.
That could be,
about it, So here's one of the things I want to say about how the fact that the planet was like an original series set when they first went down. Mm-hmm. And it was noticeable because we're getting less and less and less of those as the time of TNG goes on.
They've been doing more location shoots, or they've been building new sets.
And, But at first I was like, this is so stupid. The Borg are the technologically advanced. Like, why are you showing us this old, like, I was like, why? And then I thought, no, that's on purpose. Because we are in the original series set looking at this kind of like what we're used to in Star Trek. And the Borg are these, they're technologically advanced in a way that even in 1990 would have been like scary, right? And there's a point where they're like blowing up like little WAPs in the Borg ship, and I was like, that's not even really like something we knew about at that time, but that's basically what they were, And I was watching all this, and I was like, they had that original series set in the first scene so that we could like be kind of like jarred by the inside of the Borg ship, which we had seen before, but this time it was much clearer. There was more stuff. It wasn't all dark and smoky, like we could actually see the technology more.
Remember, at this point, TOS ended after 3 seasons.
Right.
This is the 3rd season finale.
So this
and
would
we're
be
getting
like
more. So this is the moment when people realized that TNG had surpassed TOS.
Yeah,
not just in episodes. Although I think we probably won't beat them in episode count until a little ways through season 4, just because
their seasons were longer.
Yeah, their seasons were longer back in the day. But this is the moment where it was not just this cheesy little show where everyone's wearing pajamas and sitting on cardboard. This was like a proper good television drama.
And one of my favorite moments in the whole thing was Picard wanders into the empty 10 forward, or I don't know if he knew Guinan was in there or not, but he wandered into the empty 10 forward, and he's basically like doing a tour of this ship because he knows they're going into battle, and she's like, don't they usually do that before failing battles or battles without hope or whatever? But like, it was cinematic, like a movie. Like the beats of this episode follow more of a movie, like,
and that was like the calm before the storm moment.
That was the okay, steel yourself, this is all about to happen. Because I mean, I knew he was going to be a Borg. I know who Locutus is. I've seen the name before. I've seen memes. I also have seen the movie with the Borgs, but it was one time 20 years ago, kind of thing. So I don't really remember it. But I know when you first got here and I was still watching it, I was like, wasn't he like a Borg at one point? Like, you know, like, so wasn't that a whole movie I watched? You know, so it's a little bit different than if I had watched it in 1990. You know, a little bit. But it also, I wasn't expecting like half of the beats, half of the like things that were happening. I wasn't expecting that good like exchanges between Riker and the pretty lady. What's her name?
Shelby.
Okay, yeah, Shelby. I recognized her. I feel like I've seen her in other things, but I didn't actually look her up. But she brought like a different energy than any other character. Like, and that's what's good when they bring in guest stars that are different than what we've seen before. If you just bring in like a Geordi clone or whatever, we're just like, all right, we already have Geordi. You know, which was making me wonder, which Star Trek Next Generation character do you most identify with? Like, which one is the most like you?
I would probably say Geordi. I have usually been pretty shy in relationships. So I kind of like, you know, that appeals to me. You know, he's very like engineering minded. I've always been a huge nerd. So yeah, I'd say Geordi probably.
I've been going back and forth. I've been thinking about this since I wrote this question down in my notes that I was going to ask you. And I think for me, I think it's got to be Wesley. I feel like even though I'm past 40, like I still feel like I'm still trying to prove myself to people. You know, I'm still a kid. I'm still trying to figure it out. You know, I have adult kids, but I'm still a kid trying to figure it out, you know? And I think I just relate to him a little bit more than everybody else because, like, I could relate to Bev because she's a mom. Like, I'm a mom, you know? Like, I've been thinking about it. I could relate to Deanna because, you know, she has a lot of empathy, but she's also kind of useless sometimes. But speaking of Deanna, so I think I'd go with Wesley for my answer, but, like, maybe a morph between Bev and Wes. Like, kind of something like, I think I'd be a crusher. Let me put it that way. But I want to bring up a point about Deanna in this episode. And it's not just that Marina Sirtis actually looked like she was going to cry. Like every time I turned around, like 10 different times the camera was on her and she literally looked like she was going to cry. And I was like she was like acting her heart out about this battle, you know? And I was like, oh, that's really cool. But we had Wesley at his first poker game. And
was that his first? I think he was at one previous one.
No, because they even talked about it being the first one.
But Data did say he was a newcomer to it.
Yeah,
but
I assume that meant
I think
first.
He was at like one other game. I could be mistaken, but I don't think this was.
So they're trying to teach him how to bluff and stuff. Yeah. And then, of course, Shelby ends up calling Riker's bluff.
Well, and that's the whole point because Riker always bluffs and he always gets away with it. And here Shelby, the new character, comes and she's like, no, you know what? I'm calling you on it.
Yeah, and I loved her for it.
It's. I mean, and that's kind of like a perfect encapsulation of what she is as a character for Riker.
Exactly. He's because Riker himself and all the other characters on the ship have all gotten into comfortable patterns, and this episode took them out of those comfortable patterns for every single member of the crew.
Yeah, that's funny that Riker says to Deanna, he's like, maybe that's the problem. I'm too comfortable here. And she's like, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, I know. But my point about Deanna at the poker game is that woman should not be allowed to play poker. That is not fair.
Oh, that's true.
Because she would always know who's bluffing.
I mean, maybe there's just, you know, ways that she can like passively like turn it off or something like that. I would hope. I
mean, I think Deanna is like ethical enough that she wouldn't cheat.
Well, I mean, she did confront that other guy for using his empathic abilities to get like better business deals.
Right.
So she probably ties her brain behind her back for the game.
I wasn't sure if she could. You know, like if it was a Sookie Stackhouse, everything's in my head type thing, or if she can always just like, I'm looking at you and you're looking at me, and right now I feel like you're pretty calm, right? Like I can read what you're reading, so hers is just like, or feeling, and hers is just like enhanced, and she can't turn it off. But if she can't turn it off, she should not be playing poker. That's not fair.
Well, I should say she should always be able to tell when Riker's bluffing.
Exactly.
Like always. Like, I mean,
especially Bill.
They have a strong link. Like, you know, the only people we've ever seen her able to telepathically communicate with are Loxana and Riker.
Right.
And that's significant because she's not a telepath. She's an empath, but she still can talk directly to Riker.
I think it's the people she has the closest bonds with. Because as much as her mother annoys the shit out of her, she loves her mom and she's connected to her mom. And then, of course, her and Bill.
Yeah.
You know, Imzadi, I guess. Yeah. So I want to try to guess what's going to happen in the next episode.
Okay.
I don't have any guesses yet. I've been thinking about it. So the last thing that happens is Riker says, you know, Mr. Warfire on the Borg cube or whatever, you know, and it goes to black. Very Sopranos if the show just ended there. That would have been so funny. And I was like, okay, so if this was 1990 and I was having to wait till, you know, the fall to watch this, like, what would I think was going to happen? Because now in 2022, the Borg are just a part of pop culture. Yeah. Because they were brought from this episode, and then
this is why they're pop culture.
And then Seven of Nine made everybody very,
and First Contact and all of that.
Right. So this is it. This is the Borg. So nobody, like we had seen the one episode before, or where it just seemed like it was a random one-off Doctor Who type monster. You know, we talked about them, like kind of like we talk about the Romulans. You know, like being there, but we don't like. Sometimes they throw it out as, is it the Borg? You know, kind of thing. But this was the first time we really had the Borg, you know, but for people in 1990, like they wouldn't have known anything about the Borg. I already know their hive mind. I already know, you already know
resistance is futile. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own.
Right. Yeah. And so like, it's a little bit different for me, but I've been like, I was trying to imagine what it would be like to be like watching it and then have Jean-Luc turn around and say, I'm Locutus.
Can I add a little bit of what, like, around that time, what you might have been thinking? There was, I think, rumors going around that Patrick Stewart was in renegotiations on his contract.
I bet they put that out there on purpose.
They probably did on purpose.
Because that makes it better. Yeah.
But for it to end with Picard turned into a villain, and then you're not sure if he's coming back next season, like, that gives it some extra uncertainty there.
The closest thing that I can relate to on TV that I had seen live when it happened was Buffy dying in season 5. Because they show the grave at the end, and you're like, I went to the internet, and this was like 2002 or whatever. It was harder to find like information, you know, and I went to the internet. I'm like, is Buffy canceled? What is going on? Because I figured that they ended the show. She sacrificed herself for her sister, blah, blah, blah.
I kind of feel like if the show had ended there and then we just treat Once More with Feeling as like an Elseworlds thing and that nothing else happened, I'd be okay with it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I ran over to the computer and the computer said, no, they're moving to UPN. And so that was where that happened. But that's the closest thing I could relate to, you know, is like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Yeah. You know, there's another show. Oh, was it Battlestar Galactica? I think one of their seasons ends on a really like, are all the colonists gonna die? You know?
Yeah, I feel like, was it the one where Kara shows back up? Is that the episode you're thinking of?
No, I think the one that I have in my head is, remember how they find a planet and they lie to everybody and say it's Earth or whatever, and then there's a lot of weird stuff going on with the toasters, cyborgs, what are they called? Cylons, thank you. And then they're like, and at one point, because I had nightmares about this episode for weeks, there's a point where someone just holds a gun to Six's head and shoots her. I think it was around that time, but I think this episode had like set the tone for so much more, because I think the Buffy episode, like, I think this had a lot I think this influenced a lot.
Star Trek from this point on until Enterprise is canceled in 2005, every season since always ends on a cliffhanger.
It's interesting because I sometimes get frustrated with that. I've watched shows that do that.
I don't like it now. I feel like, especially because like most TV shows now, like you have a contained story within the whole season.
Right.
Versus these are like one-off episodes, but then you have a 2-parter that you just have to wait 3 months between parts. It's a little different than if you have like a continuing story and then it ends on a big cliffhanger that you don't even know if, like, especially on shows where it's like, are you getting renewed?
Yeah. Okay, I just thought of the biggest parallel.
Okay.
Infinity War. Because it just ends with, did we just lose? And then it like ends.
Yes. No, yeah. Infinity War is the best of both worlds of our time, I guess.
I think so, because it's a different tone. The 2 episodes are 2 different tones, because you said the next episode is a different tone. I think I would guess that, I mean, even if they weren't deliberately like paralleling Best of Both Worlds, I think this episode probably set sci-fi franchises up to be able to do this.
This is... Yeah, I think the cultural impact of this episode can't be understated. I don't even know how much the cliffhanger episode was a thing before Star Trek.
I don't remember it being a thing until the 90s, because they were trying to make you come back and watch a show. Whereas before that, it was just TV that was going so that you could have something to entertain yourself when you were at home or whatever. There wasn't these long-running arcs, right?
Yeah.
And so there wouldn't have been cliffhangers. You know, I'm trying to think of shows I watched from the 80s, but most of them are sitcoms, so they don't usually have cliffhangers anyway. So I can't think of any, like, shows from the 80s because 80s shows weren't very good.
No.
Yeah. But I think this is, like, I think it's a, you know, and sci-fi tends to be the type of show that will end on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
You know, and then there's the opposite effect that Buffy did, which is there will be a big bad. We will have Monster of the Week for most of the season, but there will be these hints of the big bad, but the big bad will be defeated by the end of the season.
Yeah.
And that set a tone, because Doctor Who, the reboot, followed that tone. He said, I just stole it from Buffy.
Every CW Arrowverse show followed the Buffy formula.
Right. And so that was a new formula, because before that, I think this episode, if I was to guess, probably started a whole rash of that, you know? And then Buffy came along and said, why don't we not leave people on a cliffhanger? But then my thought is, if I remember correctly, during the time that Buffy was going, they were constantly like, are we going to have a show next season? So they couldn't leave it on a cliffhanger.
Right.
Because let's talk about one of my most frustrating watching experiences of my entire life is Carnival. It's one of those HBO shows that they canceled when they were canceling things without finishing them. And they did that. They left the second season on a cliffhanger, thinking that we were going to get a third season. HBO canceled it. And I have never found the resolution to one of my favorite shows that's ever been made. I've watched it through like 10 times. It's such a good show.
Usually when stuff like that, like the showrunner will, like, I don't know, maybe do like a comic continuation to finish it off.
Maybe I should go see if there's
something like that, because I know, could
you imagine if this just ended here, though? Like, if this is where TNG ended, and you were like, but what's happened to Jean-Luc? You know,
you've seen Galaxy Quest, right?
Yeah.
In Galaxy Quest, they ended on a cliffhanger. Like, the show got canceled on a cliffhanger, and it was a cliffhanger like this. Yes. Because it was like they're about to be destroyed, and then the captain's like, activate the Omega-13, which was like a super weapon that was always like talked about in secret, but they didn't know what it did.
Yeah.
And nobody knew because the episode ends. And then the show got canceled.
And that's got to be a direct parallel to this.
Well, Galaxy Quest is a Star Trek show. It's just objectively a Star Trek show. There was like a Star Trek convention where they were like ranking the movies from best to worst, and Galaxy Quest placed like fourth.
That's funny. Yeah, I love that movie. I should go back and watch it now that I've watched TNG, because I'd probably see all the references and stuff.
But there's a lot. There's a lot more TOS in that one too, especially with Tim Allen's character.
Yeah, he's very Shatner.
He's very Shatner.
Yeah. So I said I wanted to try to guess what happened in the next episode, but I'm stuck kind of like I said that, and then I'm like kind of like thinking about it. I mean, I know that we're getting Picard back. That's why I was talking about the differences between me and like someone watching in 1990.
Yeah.
You know. So I know that he's going to get cured somehow.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, you were sitting here when the away team beamed back to the Enterprise, and I said, why didn't they just take him with him and try to cure him on the Enterprise? But you pointed out he had that force field, right? So there's got to be a way to cure him. I don't know how it works. I know 7 of 9 exists. I don't know what her cure was. But I'm assuming that, I don't know, because the Borg are headed straight for Earth. The last thing that we heard was that Admiral guy or whatever was going to try to intercept them at such and such and make
Wolf
their
359. Remember that.
Okay.
Wolf 359 is actually probably one of the most I can't say too much.
I think I have a friend that has that in their username on like Twitter, and I didn't even know what it was.
Wolf359 is like that. That is a Star Trek.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
So yeah, they're gonna meet them there, have the last stand. So
Yeah.
like either we'll defeat them but we don't have technology that's as good as them. Like so, I was thinking maybe it'll be like, let's go back to the Revolutionary War. Let's steal their cannons. You know, like I mean, I'm like, okay, what are we gonna do here? You know, like I've been trying to think about it because you can't use technology to beat the Borg because they have way better technology than the Federation would ever have, is what it seems.
And they adapt.
And they adapt immediately. Like we saw it in this episode over and over and over again, like pretty much immediately, like faster than Doomsday. It was just like, oh, wow, okay, they already did it. The other thing is they don't, and this is what makes the Borg scary, is that they don't give a shit if they die.
Yeah.
Because they're just one of a hive. You know?
When a Borg drone dies, they're just like, all right, let's collect it for parts.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, like, you don't have any, like, if you shoot at them, they're like, whatever.
We got thousands of these dudes.
Yeah, and we can just go to a planet and make more,
Yep.
you know? So that's what makes them so scary, is the assimilation.
Yeah.
That is what is so scary.
Because, I mean, like, in Star Trek First Contact, Alfred Woodward's character describes them as bionic zombies. So
Yeah, that's a good description.
Yeah.
Is that the one with Farber Hoggett? Is
Yeah.
First Contact?
Yeah.
Okay. But so, like, I think my guess is that Picard is going to somehow fight the programming because he's Picard, you know, and he's the main character, you know. So somehow Picard is going to Picard, you know, because Star Trek is half magic and half science.
Yeah.
Like, so it's you know that Doctor Who episode with James Corden? The housekeeper or the innkeeper. Like, the doctor moves in with James Corden. The tenant, yeah.
Yes.
And it turns out it's Cyberman, and they're trying to turn James Corden into a Cyberman, but he loves his baby too much or something. And it's like,
what was the baby's name?
Stormageddon, Dark Lord of All.
Thank you.
I guess this is the second James Corden episode because the baby exists. Because the first one, he didn't even have the girl yet.
Mm-hmm.
But and then they're trying to turn him into Cyberman, trying to turn James Corden into a Cyberman, and he defeats them with the power of love. That is how I'm expecting this to go. I'm actually like Picard is going to be like, I don't know, he's going to see the Enterprise or Will or something, and he's going to like fight the programming. That's what I'm guessing. I don't know if it's true. Maybe Deanna could get in his head.
I'm liking all of your guesses. So
okay, I know you can't say anything.
I can't say anything, but
it's so funny. I'm telling this in person because normally I wouldn't be able to see your face.
You wouldn't see my face, but yeah.
You're doing a very good job of staying blank over there. And then so he'll fight it somehow, and then he'll, even if it's like small subversive, like fighting it inside of him because he's Jean-Luc, and then, you know, the Federation will come together, and then somehow we'll push the Borg out a little bit until they come back later, because obviously they're going to continue to be a reoccurring villain at this point. So I think that's my biggest guess. I mean, other than that, I'd like to see Riker be the captain for a while, you know, maybe for like the first half of the episode. You know, I don't want it to just be as soon as we get back to the next episode, it's like, oh, Riker's, you know, back to Riker or whatever. I want to see that character change become permanent, you know. The other thing I'm also interested to see is how it affects Picard on a long-term basis.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I've seen the Borg movie, the one with Picard, but it was 20 years ago, a long time, and I only saw it once. So I'm interested to see, now that I feel like I know Jean-Luc Picard as a character pretty well now at the end of 3 seasons. I feel like I might be ready, you know, like I think I might be ready to see him change, and not just from the I'm not a dick to kids anymore thing, you know, because that's really the only character development we've seen in Picard.
Is that he's warmed up to Wesley.
He's warmed up to Wesley, and he instead of being like, this isn't a family, it's an office or whatever, you know, like he's like, this is a family, this is my ship, you know, like kind of thing. And so I'm interested to see, and I feel like of all the things that's happened to Picard, like he's had some really interesting things happen to him, like being beamed into nebula clouds by the Traveler and stuff. Like he's had some really cool stuff happen to him that hasn't really affected him as a person.
But this is a very invasive trauma.
Very, yeah.
And he's like, when Locutus shows up, you're like, that's not Jean-Luc talking. That is a different person talking.
Yeah, like his entire personality was not him.
Yeah. So to be taken and violated in such a way, to be stripped of your free will, there has to be lasting repercussions. Right. That is a huge trauma.
Yeah. So I think of all of this, that would be the most, for me, I think the 2 lasting biggest parts of this episode will be the Borg, obviously, and then how it affects Jean-Luc, what he goes through. And well, we get an entire movie, right? Because is the movie connected to this episode? Is
Yes.
this why the movie exists?
Well, the movie exists because it's another Borg thing, but it definitely ties into this episode. We get flashbacks to this episode in that movie. Yeah.
Okay. So that's what I think is going to happen. I don't know that it'll be true. I don't really have a lot of guesses. Like the way that they left it where they're not leaving you anything.
Yep.
I mean, it says fire Mr. Worf, so I'm assuming they're going to fire, but last time we fired on a Borg cube, it did like a little tiny bit of damage and then it just undamaged itself with reverse camera footage. So I am interested to see what shooting the Borg ship, like with the captain on it, does. That one ship isn't going to kill Jean-Luc. Like one blast to the thing. He's not dead. I know that. So
you have the benefit of about 30 years of Star Trek after that to know that Jean-Luc Picard is in fact still alive.
Exactly. But I'm excited. I think this is such a good end to the season. Like I'm looking back because we were going to talk about the season.
Yeah, let's do a retrospective here.
So now that we're here and we're at the end, I'm like thinking about the episode, like we've done for the other 2 seasons, and like thinking about how it ended it. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. These writers are so smart. Like they are creating things that didn't exist before in television writing.
Yeah.
So they're giving us the slow character development that gets tested by the end of the season kind of thing. Not necessarily the big bad like in Buffy, but we're getting these like small bits. And then everybody was tested in this episode. Deanna was tested, Riker was tested, Jean-Luc was tested, even Guinan was tested because her whole entire race was killed by the Borg,
And we start to see more like permanent character changes in this show. Like,
which I think is the whole point of that "Why am I still here?" Deanna conversation. It was to make us look at him and go, "Oh, he has become complacent. We've become complacent watching the show."
Well, and it's kind of one of those things where it becomes awkward the longer that Riker doesn't move on from a first officer's position because he's fully qualified to be a captain.
Right.
But even in the movies, he's not a captain.
Yeah.
Even in the movies, he's still just the first officer. And
because he'd have to get off the ship because you don't usually have 2 captains.
Right. Well, and in Star Trek 6, Sulu was captain of his own ship. And because of that, he's not in most of the movie. He's like at the beginning and at the end.
I remember that now that you say it, but I assumed that was some sort of scheduling conflict.
Well, it may just be. He probably jumped at the chance to not have to be on set with William Shatner.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But yeah, it's one of those awkward things where, yes, naturally, these people should be moving on with their careers, but it's a cast of a show, and they all have to stay together, so you have to find a way to, like, explain why that is.
Right.
But it's good that, they interrogate it, and here Riker has to interrogate, why isn't he taking his commission? Why isn't he going on to the Melbourne?
Because the character, I can't remember her name. What's her name?
Shelby.
She is here to make him. She is literally walking around holding that mirror up.
She's
to his
a foil.
Face. Yes.
She's literally a foil.
Yeah.
And it's not just in this episode that we get stuff like that. Worf had, like, we haven't even seen the full impact of what that was, but Sins of the Father, when he's excommunicated from Klingons homeworld, that informs his character for the rest of the show.
Oh.
Like,
because we haven't seen any follow-up yet.
We haven't seen any follow-up yet, but, like, he used to be, like, the head of a prominent house on Kronos, and now he's excommunicated. Like, you're going to see, like, what that means for him as a person, what that means for Federation Klingon relations, and it was such a big change, because, like, usually, like, a conflict like that, they would resolve it by the end of the episode, but at the end of the episode, the resolution is, you're out.
Right.
And that's where it ends. And so to see things like that, and then we had Wesley get promoted to full ensign at the end of an episode. There's like big, serious character changes that we see happen. And I appreciate that they do that instead of just going back to the Simpsons status quo is destroyed, or everything is status quo,
Right, yeah. I think that I was just thinking while you were talking about that one of the things that is happening in the show now, especially in season 3, now that we've got the writers know what they're doing, they're established, we have these characters, we know who they are, no more origin stories, you know, that kind of stuff. Have we ever in television before, like we said, we didn't watch a lot of TV in the 80s, but is this the first time that we had an ensemble show where they would start to have episodes that were focused on one character?
Probably.
Because I can't think of other ones before this, you know?
Yeah, I would have to go back and watch other shows.
Even the Toss, that's what it's called, but even the original series, even the original series didn't have that. It was always just the ensemble, and Shatner was kind of the lead singer.
I think, yeah, Shatner was the star of the show. I think, like, the animated series got into a bit of that. There's like one episode of the animated series that Kirk isn't even in. Spock's the main character.
Oh,
Spock's,
interesting.
and Spock gets a lot of focus episodes in the original series too. But like there's an episode where there's a virus that affects all the men or something like that. Or there's like some siren being that controls all of them. So the women have to take control of the ship. So it's like a Uhura and Chapel episode.
Yeah, interesting.
And yeah, the original series didn't really have that, but with the animated series, they're like, hey, you know what, we can do more.
Right.
Do more things.
Yeah. So I like that too, because there's two things like in this retrospective that I'm thinking about. One is this seems to be like history making for television, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And then because like this is and you said third season is really where people think, you know, Next Generation starts to take off. Like it starts with second season, growing the beard, and then we get to third season, and it really starts to take off. And if that's the case, and based on this season, and they continually have gotten better and better and better, that I can't wait to see what happens in 4 and 5.
I maintain that 4 and 5 are the best of the show.
Yeah.
I think they start to lose some steam after that, but like
most
4
shows do.
Yeah.
You know?
That's why I think shows should have like a finite lifespan. Like I remember I gave up on Smallville. I had been watching that show for like 10 seasons, and I'm just like, he's never going to put on this suit. Yeah. So I just quit until like they ended it. And I'm like, all right, I'll watch the finale so I can see him in the suit.
Yeah. Just to see him in the suit. Yeah, I did too. Oh, and I tuned in for the Jonathan Kent dying episode because that's one of my favorite parts of Superman is that story.
Yeah.
But there's people get like mad when shows end, but like the something that I'll bring up because we're talking about like sci-fi in the 90s is that people would always say that one of the reasons that Babylon 5, which I haven't seen, is so good is it had a 5-year plan. They knew what they were doing. They planned it all out, and it wasn't like they were just trying to, we got another season. What story can we do this season? Like they had an actual plan. So did The Good Place.
Yeah.
So did Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and they ended in good places because they instead of like. I like The Office, and I actually like the last few seasons of The Office. Most people don't. Most fans don't. Once Steve Carell leaves, they're like, oh, whatever, it's so stupid now. And I'm like, but in my opinion, some of the best episodes are in there. But it's that thing where it just kind of keeps going, and you're like, but naturally, maybe it should have ended when Steve Carell, you know, like, or naturally it should have ended here and they keep going. I think it's good when shows have an ending.
Yes.
You know, and instead of just trying to be like, well, what are we going to do? Like with Voyager, when I was watching the Voyager TV, like I was watching it in syndication to watch the older ones, and then it was coming on live as well.
Yeah.
So I remember thinking, well, they have to get home at the end, right? Yeah. Like, you know.
Interesting. I think there was actually a debate in the writers' room about whether they would ever actually get home.
And they did, right?
They did.
If I remember.
They did, but I think they were debating it. They're like, what if we don't? But I don't think anyone would have been satisfied with that ending. Like that's like a How I Met Your Mother ending where he ends up with Aunt Robin instead of the mother.
Yeah, I know.
Like I think like twists like that work in the middle of a story, but like if you have a long running thing with people who are invested in it, you don't want to have an unsatisfying ending. Right.
Exactly.
Like even if you think, oh well, this is creatively different. This is different than what we do. Okay, but there are reasons certain things have become tropes, and there are reasons certain things are expected. You want a happy ending or like a bittersweet ending. Yeah. You don't want it to end in an unexpected way that leaves nobody satisfied just because it's something different. Don't do that.
So I brought up The Good Place, and I just want to say this since we're talking about show endings. I do not watch the final episode of The Good Place.
Really?
I've watched it through 2 or 3 times now. I watched it the first time I watched it through. The reason is I would never, like, I am not in the mindset that I could ever walk through that door.
Well, I mean,
Tahani
doesn't.
So yeah. I would be Tahani, but it makes me too sad because I'm basically watching all my favorite characters. I love those people. Those characters are amazing. Literally right behind me are pop figures of Chidi and Eleanor.
I was crying so hard in that episode when the moment when Jason realized he was done. I just broke down.
My eyes are doing the thing. Yeah, and so now when I rewatch it, I skip it because it's too sad for me. Because it doesn't feel like they're moving on to a good place. They're moving on to not existing anymore, which actually has been really scary for me my entire life because I was raised in a weird Christian household, and like so I had this fear of like hell and everything. But like I'm actually a little bit more scared of just ceasing to exist. You know, I don't know. It weirds me out, you know?
It's the unknown. It's the, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have that fear myself. Like, I have that mindset where, like, if I fall asleep and I don't wake up, I'm at peace with that.
Because you won't know.
I won't know.
But then, like, I brought up the Sopranos ending earlier, and, like, everybody hates it. I love that ending.
I think it's a brilliant ending. Yeah. It's not the most satisfying ending, but it's not a bad ending, and it was so impactful. Like, it kept the conversation going.
I wasn't watching the show,
like a Game of Thrones ending where, like, that ending was so bad that it killed the audience goodwill from the last 7 years.
Right.
There's a spinoff, I think, that premieres as we're recording this. I think it premieres tomorrow.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm so sad Matt Smith is in it because you know I don't like Game of Thrones, and he's one of my favorite like sci-fi actors.
I'm gonna give it a shot. We'll see. Yeah. I know that the writers for Game of Thrones are not involved. So that's a plus.
Yeah. And I'm just saying all of this to talk about how much all of this is because of Best of Both Worlds.
Yeah.
Like, I'm bringing up all of these things to talk about how, like, interesting it is from, like, a television history standpoint to watch this episode, see that cliffhanger, watch the evolution of the show, watch the evolution of the writing, the characters. And at this point, I believe you said Gene Roddenberry's kind of out, right?
Yeah, he's got an office, but he's got health issues, and I think
because he's dying really soon, right? If I remember correctly, 91.
Something like that. Yeah.
Because I was looking at Majel Barrett when I forgot she was married to him, remember? Yeah. And it was like married to him through 1991. I was like, oh, did they get divorced or did he die? You know, so yeah.
Yeah. I think he dies in season 5. I think that would probably be it. Anyway.
Yeah.
I know he was like aware of Deep Space Nine's development, but he died before it came out.
And did Deep Space Nine start before Voyager? I thought it came after Voyager.
Came before Voyager.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Well, I'm really excited to see where it goes. Yep. You know, I don't even know. Like, usually I want to watch the episode right before we talk about it because I want to see it, but I'm like tempted to watch the second half here when we get done. But I'm going to make myself do the cliffhanger till next week because you asked me to and because everybody else on the planet had to do it too, you know? So
we waited 3 months. You can wait a week.
Yeah, exactly. Did you watch this one live? Were you watching it live when it aired?
I don't remember if I was, because I was like 5 at the time, so I don't have.
So you don't know if it was like syndication when you saw it for the first time?
Yeah, like I don't have like a strong memory.
Do you remember your first reaction to it?
No, I think it may have been a thing where I had just seen them both in syndication. Mm-hmm. I don't have like a strong temporal sense of when things came out as I was watching them.
Yeah, because like
I was
you
a
said
kid
in
at the
another
time.
episode,
It was just
you were
always
like,
on.
it was before you started forming memories. Star Trek just existed.
Yeah, so it was always on. So I didn't really have like a strong delineation of where the seasons were.
Yeah. I was just wondering because the other thing that it left me with when I slammed my head down and said what, you know, was like, what other shows have done this to me? What other shows have made me feel the same amount of stress? You know, like I was watching it feeling stressed. I think you saw me. I was doing my foot at one point, you know, and I was like, what other shows have given me this amount of stress? And I thought it's the mutiny episodes of Battlestar Galactica. Do you remember those two? I was sitting on my bed, like clenching my blankets, like, are they gonna airlock Gata? What is happening? You know, like, I thought of that one immediately when the To Be Continued came up because I was never as stressed about an episode of TV as I was about that mutiny episode. I was like, they just wrote it in a way that made you care. And they wrote this episode and this season, so many of the episodes they've written in a way that makes you care.
Yeah.
There's I'd say a handful this season where we were like, bleh, you know, we didn't like this one.
Like Transfigurations
right.
is kind of.
Yeah. But other than that, like, it was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's everything for today. We'll be back next week when I've watched the second part. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ari.
And I'm GayFesh.
And until next time,
live long and prosper.
Thanks for watching.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified when new episodes come out.
We're on Twitter at Rest Both Worlds.
Join our Patreon at patreon.com/restofbothworlds for bonus content and hear your name at the end of each episode.